She was the youngest of 9 and pretty easygoing, but when you got her mad, she knew how to take care of herself. My mother said about her mother. She continued, Uncle Earl was always a troublemaker. When he came to visit your grandfather and started in on him with those notable powers of persuasion he had, Mom warned Uncle Earl once, then let out a few expletives, and then threw him out of the house. She was a firecracker for her size. I heard that story dozens of times growing up. It was part of the family lore, this diminutive woman tossing out on his ear her much larger and elder brother-in-law. Do you know why? Because Uncle Earl was a Jehovah's Witness who tried to convert his gullible younger brother, my grandfather. And my grandmother was having none of it. Now, many of us can recount those tales about our doorstep encounters with Jehovah's Witnesses. Those interactions run the gamut from polite refusals, I have my own church, thank you, to respectful debates in the living room, to full-blown front porch confrontations. Despite it all, the Jehovah's Witnesses persevere, and it pays off for them. They make notes, they catch up with others on their neighborhood team, and chances are they will return to continue their work with you another day. Don't you know? But they are at an extreme with evangelism. And most Americans don't like extremists. Most United Methodists, however, are at the other extreme. So that makes our brand of mainline Protestantism extreme too. But we like ourselves, right? I thought we said we don't like extremists. Well, chances are we never thought of United Methodists as being extremists, but follow the logic on this. If Jehovah's Witnesses are always evangelizing and at one extreme, and United Methodists never share our faith at the other extreme, then, hey, let the chips fall where they may. Truth be told, many, many United Methodists are also at an extreme. Are we one of them? But it's results that count, right? It's not where we are on that continuum. According to a Pew Research Center analysis, Jehovah's Witnesses are the only faith group in the United States which has seen a net increase. The United Methodist Church in the United States, in contrast, annually loses the equivalent of one 300-member congregation every day of the year, according to a 2019 survey. By the way, I don't know if you've caught this, that how many of the surveys that I'm reciting to you come from pre-COVID times, because everything just kind of stopped. Only now are some of that new research coming out. And you'll hear some of that too. The point is, at the end of last year, the PBS NewsHour reported that we lost, as United Methodist, 7,000 congregations and 648 more the first 4 months of this year as of Tuesday. And as of Thursday, 4 entire conferences in Eastern Europe and Western Asia also left. Entire conferences, not just individual churches. Our recent family fight, highlighted by the ongoing General Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, has so far cost nearly 40% of our congregations liberal, conservative, and in between, and it's not over yet. Unsustainable. So I liken us to Jesus' disciples in Acts 1, who even after having experienced Jesus and all that he's about, just stand around, gazing heavenward, seemingly oblivious to all of the spiritual need around. We thought Jonah was ignorant, right? These are the disciples. Our communities, our nation, our world are a mess. More troubled and dangerous than ever. And United Methodists are fighting in church and in court. If Jesus hadn't risen from the dead, he'd be rolling over in his grave. Let me just say as an aside, do you know what a joy it is to be in a congregation that's not fighting? You do know that. And we're enjoying some of the fruits of that. When other United Methodist churches are going like this, we're seeing our attendance and participation tick upward. As balanced and as middle of the road as Methodists used to be, and some still are, of course, we're really off the bottom of the charts when it comes to faith sharing. A return to the center, then, is in order and so needed in this world. I mean, can you honestly say that life is better with American Christianity in decline? Chances are most of us don't know what it's like to have someone calmly, clearly, and sincerely share their faith story with us. Oh, we may have heard a testimony or two, on Christian television, or had some in-your-face, pushy sectarian enthusiast recite the 4 spiritual laws that made the JWs look like amateurs. But hearing someone's spiritual life story is really rare. But rarer still is relating our own faith story. We just don't do that. Why? Well, we have several, how shall I say, not so excellent excuses. Excuse number 1, it's not in my personality to do that. Excuse number 2, it's not my spiritual gift. Excuse number 3, I wouldn't know what to say, and I'd mess it up anyway. Excuse number 4, there are 3 things you don't talk about: sex, politics, and religion. Excuse number 5, that's what we pay preachers for. Just saying. Have you uttered one of them? Now check out this next statement and ask yourself whether you agree with it. I honestly believe that every person I know would lead a vastly better life if God's love and grace were operating in their lives. Do you agree or disagree? Now, if you believe that statement is false, something you'd never say, then you'd need no excuses for not sharing the gospel. You're just being honest in that you don't value what God offers in Jesus Christ and don't believe God's love and grace are blessings for others. I mean, when you don't believe or agree with those things, why would you ever want to share a love that you don't believe or possess yourself? You'd be dishonest. You'd be a hypocrite. And even non-believers value honesty. So it makes sense to not share something that you yourself don't believe. If you do believe that statement to be true, however, and I certainly hope you do, that's why you're here, then you have no excuse to not share the love of God. I mean, it's rather simple. Either you know the love of Christ and how that love has changed your life for the better, or not. There's no in between. It's like being a little pregnant. You either are or you aren't. There's no such thing as being a little pregnant. And so there's no such thing as being a little Christian. You either are or you aren't. Now, you may be unsure about your faith, and that's okay. But the truth is, even with that, then you're really not solidly on board. You lack that, as we say, blessed assurance. Now, you may be on your way to believing, and we rejoice in that fact, but at this point, let's face it, you're not there. And so there's no need to apologize for what you are not. Again, honesty. But there's every reason in the world to apologize to God if you are a follower of Jesus who keeps this love to yourself, not being his witness, as he says in Acts 1. I mean, that's being a hypocrite too. If you and I are sincerely convinced that the love of Jesus will improve life spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, economically, familially, domestically, socially, publicly, privately, I'm running out of fingers, professionally, politically, life in every way, then we cannot help but share this passion. We know how Jesus changing us is a blessing, and subsequently desire that blessing for others. It's not a liberal or conservative matter. It's about Jesus. It's about faithfulness. It's our identity as Jesus' friends and disciples. It's who we Christians are, period. The real problem then is that we don't know how to do it. For many of us, it's not that we don't want to share our faith in Christ, it's that we lack sound, helpful models. We've never been taught. From children's Sunday school, through adult Bible studies, through worship, most of us have never been taught. How could we ignore this big line from Jesus, go make disciples? But we have. We lack sound, helpful models. And so in this series, I'm going to teach. In the last 3 sermons from the book of Jonah about the prophet Jonah, you learned the theory about why we don't do it. There were a lot of head shaking, right, those past 3 weeks. But now we're going to actually learn how to do it, how to share one's faith. And I can tell you that it's a whole lot easier than you think. And it's not uncomfortable at all for you or for the person to whom you're speaking. Not uncomfortable. Now, talk about, say, the Phillies or the Eagles. Hey, we're there. Our lips never moved so giddily, right? Truth is, you and your favorite team hold precious little power to change your life, let alone your eternity or anyone else's. I mean, we get more excited and communicative about a team's wins or losses, about a certain player, say like Jason Kelce or his brother Travis and his girlfriend Taylor Swift, and the behavior of the city of not-so-brotherly love crowds during game day. We get more excited about that than we do Jesus' effect on our lives every day. And again, a large part of our faith-sharing issue is that we don't have good examples. But we have all sorts of bad examples that are turn-offs. Well, we don't want to, and neither should we be like them. Plus, there's a whole lot of bad information out there in the public domain about Christianity, such that before we even open our mouths, we're in a deficit position. Well, how do we overcome that? I mean, there's so much that people believe about God and the Bible that's just plain wrong. It's misunderstood, even among churchgoers. So people know what it's not to like. People know what it's not to like about the Christian faith and are opting out, but they don't know what's to love about Jesus, meaning that they don't know the love of Jesus. And I have to ask, again, why are we not sharing it? Because that's the point of all of this. Now, full disclosure, I'm not going into this with rose-colored glasses. Certainly the behavior of churchgoers has been less than stellar over the years. Many times persons who take the name of Christian have been rudely judgmental, focused too much on money, not been welcoming to visiting strangers in our congregations. I mean, do you know how many times we told a guest that he or she took our pew? Really? I'm not kidding. Some of our faith leaders have behaved most poorly too. Enough said. The media, though, highlight those failings rather than report all of the good work and philanthropy and compassionate service that we regularly engage in, locally and globally. Instead of being fair-minded and honest and informative, in other words, telling the whole story, reporters and editors are too often not just unchristian, but in my opinion, anti-Christian. The most recent survey in 2013 showed that the number of journalists of all faiths who worship regularly is less than 8%. That's all faiths. So the Christian portion of that is less than 8%. And I suspect that 11 years later, because that was a 2013 survey, that number of 8% has actually decreased. Because after COVID, all church attendance for everybody decreased. So I would make the presumption that, a logical presumption, that it's decreased also for journalists. So less than 8% of journalists worship regularly. Which is to say that media don't understand faith. And they reflect that lack of understanding in their reporting to a population that also doesn't know Christianity. They know about us what they hear. I'll give you an example. Reporting on the Baptist priest. I didn't know Southern Baptists had priests. Or calling the female Episcopal rector father. Really kind of pretty basic stuff. It shows the ignorance that is being transmitted to the culture. And that's with respectable media outlets. That's not even social media or fringe elements. That's the mainstream stuff. Boy, do we have a big hill to overcome. And of course, this whole separation of church and state worldview just adds to the confusion. But all of this is to say that I understand our reluctance when it comes to faith sharing, because there's a whole lot that militates against us. I mean, if you tried to share your faith, but your words weren't well received by someone, that's pretty discouraging. But don't sweat it. Just shake the dust from your feet and move on, as Jesus teaches. I mean, let's face it, it's not the first misstep you've ever made in a relationship. It won't be the last. Good people are forgiving of us. Because again, these are people we know. We're not going up to some strangers. So there is a way to do this, to tell your personal faith story. A way that is relational, that is respectful, that is gentle, that doesn't rely on quoting memorized Bible verses or using churchy language, as Pat Moore said earlier, or require a southern accent and blow-dried hair and a polyester suit. That is low risk, that is accomplished in 100 words or less in about 45 seconds. And doing so in a way that is from your life and from your heart. What I'm telling you is that this is really doable. And Jesus expects as much from his friends and disciples. Sharing faith is honest, it is refreshing, it is compassionate, and it plants seeds that promise to help us and others love Jesus and live for him. Maybe not right away, as soon as we've done that sharing, maybe not right away, but in God's time. I love to tell the story. Do you? Or is it just a hymn? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.